one of the most controversial horror sequels ever made. We're talking about Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2. Hey, how's it going, everyone? Welcome to tuning into another episode here at Figure Out Films. I'm your host, as always, Chris, and like I said, we're talking Nightmare on Elm Street again here. Yes, this is a VHS copy here, but I also have a signed copy here from star of the movie, Mark Patton. And let's get into it today. So if you missed the first part where we talked about Nightmare on Elm Street from 1984, the original, we're doing a Nightmare on Elm Street franchise review and then a final ranking video because it is my favorite horror franchise as this video series. One of the first video series we're doing on this channel, so let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. In 1985, when Nightmare on Elm Street 2 did first come out, it was fresh off the heels of the original. The original made so much money, it garnered so much critical and audience success that the sequel just had to come out, and New Line Cinema just could not wait, and they had to put out 1985's Nightmare on Elm Street 2, Freddy's Revenge. Now, what's so different about this approach is that we love Nancy from the first movie, The Survivor, but what happened at New Line Cinema is they decided to go a different direction. They decided to star a young male actor, Mark Patton, to star as Jesse in this new movie. Now, this movie is riddled with off-the-set drama, a lot of controversy from the studio and the directing and the writing and the star of this movie. It's so much that we really just got to get into it. So Mark Patton, the star of this movie, plays Jesse, who is a new family that moved into the house that Nancy lived in. And it turns out that the reason that they got to move in there is because Jesse's dad, played by Clu Gallagher, who I absolutely love. He was also in Return of the Living Dead as well, along with other great pictures. He recently did pass away, so rest in peace, Clu. He comes in and reveals that he did buy the house because it was so cheap due to what the events happened in the previous movie. And in this movie, it's a little different because Freddy Krueger is not invading your dreams solely. He is trying to possess the body of Jesse. And that's why I really love this movie. It's very unique. When I say I love this movie, I love this movie to death. It's my if you see here, I have a documentary about Nightmare on Elm Street 2 and the star Mark Patton and his story. From Vinegar Syndra's partner label. I have a Mark Patton autograph from a famous scene in the movie. And then I also have the Jack Shoulder autograph, director of Nightmare on Elm Street 2, with my Nightmare on Elm Street 2 poster as well. I absolutely love this movie. It's big. The secret's already out. I love this movie so much. The reason that this movie got greenlit so fast, a 1-year turnaround, and then we get a sequel, is because New Line Cinema knew they were sitting on a gold mine and that they needed a strike when the iron was hot. And they decided to get a young upcoming star, Mark Patton, and they also decided to get one of their in-house directors who had great success with Alone in the Dark, Jack Shoulder. Then, once they put that out, they needed to change it up, and they needed Freddy to be kind of more of a slasher. We needed more kills in this movie. It's like Randy says in Scream that in the sequel, we do need more kills, we need more
blood, more gore, carnage, candy. Your core audience just expects it.
More intensity, we need more blood and guts, we need to get the audience guessing. This movie does exactly all that. Basically, we get way more killing. We get introduced to so many different new characters because this is actually, even though it's a year after, it feels like a couple years removed from the original because no one is talking about Freddy Krueger. Fred Krueger from the first movie, we find out is really there or not. Is it all in Jesse's head? It's just really interesting to see how Freddy Krueger manipulates only Jesse in this movie. He's not in there. He's not in this movie killing other characters in their dreams like we saw in the first movie, invading Tina and Glenn and everyone else. In this movie, it's really just about Jesse. And then we find out that he's trying to possess Jesse's body, which is a very interesting take on the character Freddy Krueger. There's no really rules established outside of that he's in the dream world. We did see him get pulled out in the first movie, and in this one, he's trying to come out of the dream world by force. Kind of scary when you think about it. And the great thing about this movie, what I love it so much, is because it's one of my favorite looks of Freddy Krueger. Well, how can Fred Krueger look so different in a movie where he's iconic? He's got the bird face, he's got the fedora. Misconception is he does wear the striped Christmas sweater from his sleeves. In the original, it's only on the chest. From the second movie and on, it establishes that he has red and green stripes on his sleeves. Bet you didn't know that. And also, he's a lot meaner in this movie. He looks almost demonic. He's very scary and aggressive in this movie in his facial expressions. There's no games in this movie with Freddy Krueger. He is out for blood and revenge, hence why it's Freddy's Revenge. He's out to find a new generation of kids to scare and kill on Elm Street in this movie. I really like it. It feels like a new generation, yet it doesn't feel like it's overstepping from the first movie. It's kind of doing its own thing in some ways. I think it rubs people the wrong way because of a lot of homosexual undertones from this movie. And honestly, a lot of controversy stems from that. I personally love it. I think it's great. I think it wears its heart and its sleeve in that aspect, carried by the star, Mark Patton. However, it turns out that the turmoil was the writer of the film, which I'm not going to give credit for, because kind of fuck that guy. He had found out that Mark was secretly homosexual, and at that time, he could have got blacklisted, and eventually what happened is he did get blacklisted. What I love about this movie also is that Jesse and Lisa are discovering the lore of Freddy Krueger from a found diary of Nancy from the previous movie, and they're learning more about him and what he can do and what he's trying to do. And also throughout this movie, we get glimpses of like hallucination scenes with Jesse, which we don't know, or is he in the dream world? Is he doing a dream sequence? Or is this in the real world that's affecting him? He's walking around, he's witnessing murders that Freddy Krueger is committing, but he has the glove in his hand, which is the first time we have ever seen, and the only time I think we've ever seen in this franchise, where he's actually brandishing the glove, and he's kind of committing the murders with Freddy Krueger simultaneously. It's a very interesting take. It's very unique and cool, and it makes for some interesting moments, which is why Jessie, played by Mark Patton, is also known as a Scream Queen. Because of that iconic scream he has when he realizes that he's committed a murder. Now, the makeup and effects in this movie, honestly, are really great. They're practical. We get a lot of scenes where Freddy is bursting out. We get a lot of close-up slashing. In the first movie, we see a lot of simulated killing, where like blood just splurts out. We don't see that much splashing. We see a hanging as well. In this movie, Freddy just has his finger claws out. He is slashing, he is shredding, and it's just all over the place. So there was definitely more of a budget in this movie, which I definitely appreciate. And this movie, even it didn't get received very well. It was kind of like why it was a little different in terms of tone from the first movie to the second movie. This one did try to be a little bit more by the numbers a slasher movie, but still maintains that uniqueness that is a Nightmare on Elm Street. You still get the iconic music and score as well. You get some very interesting sequences like Freddy taking over a bird and it exploding. I think the cast is great here. It's very iconic of other cult 80s movie actors in this. And then also, I think it's garnered a great cult following as well. I think you see it all the time being played, especially during Pride Month, and then also with late night screenings to just appreciate Mark Patton and this movie's uniqueness. It wears it, like I said, its heart in its sleeve. I saw this movie actually at the Music Box when Mark Patton and Jack Shoulder did come to do a screening of an anniversary of the film, and it was amazing. It was great to see the movie. The crowd was awesome. I think this movie is one of the most underrated horror movies, in my opinion. It's one of my all-time favorites as well. But it genuinely is a well-made movie, in my opinion. I mean, you get a lot of great stuff. It flies through, where the first one feels a little tad long at times. This movie has a lot going. There's a lot of action. There's a lot of moving. There's not that much exposition. The movie kind of just goes in with you expecting that you knew what happened in the first movie. I will say some complaints I do have is the perspective of Freddy Krueger trying to take over Jesse. We see Jesse do more of the killing than Freddy does. And then also the way that Freddy does die, even though it is very gross and interesting and different on how to defeat Freddy, by Lisa kissing Freddy Krueger after he takes over Jesse's body. Jesse's still somehow in there, and Lisa ends up kissing him to break Freddy off of Jesse, which is insane to see and hard to believe as well. It's still very interesting in a way, but it's still the same as the first movie, where I'm just not as crazy about the ending. These movies seem to not be able to wrap up loose ends in a great way. I just don't care for these endings as much, but the ride is so great that I always, glance over them. It's no biggie there. But yeah, and I mean, Wes Craven has made it known that he was not a big fan of this movie as well, because it does change a lot of the things that he had set in place with the first movie to make this more, again, like just a standard sequel slasher movie, but it still, I think, is unique enough to stand on its own from most of the other Nightmare movies. It definitely is like the oddball black sheep of the franchise. It doesn't seem like it connects itself well, where it's 3 through 4 feel like they're all connected in some aspect there. But I am still just a huge fan of this movie. I highly recommend people check this movie out and watch it and have a great time, because this movie is a lot of fun and it is really awesome. And actually, I think now more than ever is the time to watch this movie. Like I said, it has a great following. A lot of people coming around to this movie and realizing like, wow, this was a really great movie for its time, and even now it holds up. So I highly recommend you check it out and you enjoy it. What are your thoughts on A Nightmare on Elm Street 2? Are you a fan of this movie? Do you remember watching this? I actually watched this movie more than the original growing up. It was just so easy to watch, and you know, there's a lot going on, like I said, in this movie, that it just kept me watching and enjoying and entertaining myself with this movie. Like I said, I love the characters in this so much. So please, I highly recommend checking out. Let me know what your thoughts are on Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2 down below in the comments. And are you excited for the next episode, where we talk about Chuck Russell's Dream Warriors and that iconic theme song there? But thank you all for tuning in to another episode here at Figure Out Films. My name is Chris. If you are not watching the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise, do you really care about cinema? Other than that, I'll see you next time.